I want to begin by taking something off your shoulders, the heaviness you feel in your home, the rooms that never quite feel finished, the corners that seem to sigh when you walk past them. That heaviness is not because you are messy. It is not because you are lazy or behind. It is simply that no one ever showed you a gentler way to live with your own four walls. That is not a criticism. It was never taught. So let me show you, not a harder way, a lighter one. Imagine your same home, but somehow easier to breathe inside. That is what the elders of Okinawa seem to have, and much of it comes down to a handful of things they quietly chose to let go. 7 of them. Stay with me to the 7th. Because the 7th is not a thing you remove with your hands. It is a quiet way of seeing. One word I will not say until the very end. And once you understand it, the other 6 will settle into place on their own. It is also, I think, why these people so rarely seem hurried, even at 90. But before that, there is a 4th I would ask you to listen for especially. It will sound backward. It runs against almost everything the modern home is built to sell you. Sit with it anyway. You may be waiting for me to hand you a system, a weekend, a great purge that leaves you exhausted. I have none of that. What the elders understand is simpler and kinder. A home is not a problem to be solved in one push. It is a quiet companion you tend a little each day. Stop fighting it, and it begins to give something back. A steadiness you can feel in your own chest. Not a tidier house, a calmer life inside it. The first thing they do not keep is a surface left buried. No table covered in mail and bags and half-finished things. No counter where the eye keeps tripping over what was never put away. I learned this from a grandmother in Ogimi, a village they call simply the village of longevity. Her granddaughter told me that every night before she sleeps, the old woman clears every surface in the house, not scrubbed, not perfect, just cleared, a bare wooden table catching the last light. She said her grandmother does it the way other people say their prayers. The thing she keeps is empty surfaces. The thing she refuses is the pile that whispers, "Deal with me later." Now, you might think this is only about being tidy. It is something quieter than that. The Japanese call it seiri, sorting, putting in order, the first discipline of deciding what truly belongs in a space and letting the rest go so that nothing unneeded stays in view. And here is what the science gently confirms. A UCLA study by Saxby and Ripetti found that women who described their homes as cluttered and full of unfinished things carried a flatter daily stress hormone rhythm, the kind tied to worse health, while women who spoke of their homes as restful showed the healthier pattern. It was never about laziness. A buried surface is simply a home that never stops murmuring small demands. Clear it, and the murmuring stops. As the old woman might say, the table sleeps when you do. So tonight, perhaps, clear one surface before bed, only one, and notice how the room exhales. We will need that calm for what comes next. The second thing they do not keep is a wall that shouts. No shelves crowded with trinkets, no walls packed edge to edge with frames and decorations, all competing for your eye. The elder keeps the walls and the shelves, mostly bare. I remember visiting an old tea house once, kept by a woman whose family had tended it for generations. One long wall held nothing at all, just plaster, and the shadow, the afternoon laid across it. I asked, almost embarrassed, why she had not hung something there. She smiled and said the wall was already holding something. The quiet. What she kept was the emptiness. What she refused was the urge to fill it. You might think a bare wall is only minimalism, a style, a trend. It is something older. The Japanese call it ma, the cultivated empty space between things, the interval that is treated as having as much worth as objects themselves. The void is not lack. It is where the eye is finally allowed to rest, and the brain agrees. Princeton neuroscientists McMains and Kastner found that when many objects crowd the visual field at once, they compete for the brain's attention and actually suppress one another in the visual cortex. So a cluttered wall quietly makes it harder for the eye to settle. A room without competition gives an aging mind less to fight. That is the calm of Ma. As the tea house keeper said, the empty wall is the most generous thing in the room. The third thing they do not keep is the light burning too long. No bright lamps blazing into the night. No glowing screens in the room where they sleep. No just one more light left on as the dark comes in. As night falls, the bedroom is kept dim and free of screens. I remember an evening in the home of an elder couple, relatives of a friend. After supper, they did not flood the rooms with light. They lowered everything to a kind of candle glow. The husband said gently that the day was allowed to end now, that they did not need to argue with the dusk. What they kept was the dimness. What they refused was the brightness that overrides the evening. You might think this is only about saving electricity or old-fashioned thrift. It is something tenderer. There is a Japanese idea, Yoan, the lingering resonance, the afterglow that should be left undisturbed once a moment has passed. And the body keeps that rhythm closely. Harvard sleep researchers at Brigham and Women's Hospital found that ordinary room light in the evening, compared with keeping the room dim, pushed back the body's release of its nighttime hormone, melatonin, and shortened how long it lingered. In nearly everyone they studied, letting the evening grow dark lets the body's own night signal rise on time. As the old husband said, let the day finish its sentence. The fourth thing they do not keep. And here is the one I asked you to wait for. No wall of overstuffed sofas. No deep, sinking armchairs. The home is kept low. Cushions, a mat on the floor. Instead of a room built for collapsing into and not getting up. I know. This is the backward one. We were all taught that comfort means softer, deeper, more to sink into. So let me tell you about a man I met in his 90s in Okinawa. After tea, he simply folded down to the floor to sit with us, and later rose again, without a hand on the table, without a groan, without a thought. I, decades younger, struggled up after him. What he kept was the floor. What he refused was the furniture that lets the body forget how to rise. You might think this is only about old custom or saving space. It is something stronger. The Japanese call it yukaza, floor living, the practice of sitting and rising at floor level rather than filling a room with high, soft chairs. And this is the one with perhaps the most striking science of all. Researchers led by Claudio Gil Suarez de Araujo in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology in 2014 tracked about 2,000 adults aged 51 to 80 and found that how easily a person can lower themselves to the floor and rise again without leaning on a hand or knee was a strong predictor of how long they lived. Less comfortable seating, more life. Rising from the floor a dozen times a day keeps the hips, the legs, the balance strong into old age. And that strength is its own kind of calm, because an elder who trusts their body never lives in fear of a fall. The backward thing was a wise thing all along. There, that is a loop closed. Sit a little lower and stand a little longer. The fifth thing they do not keep is a bedroom that works for a living. No boxes stacked in a corner, no mountain of laundry, no overflow shoved into the room where they sleep. The sleeping room holds almost nothing at all. A visiting nurse once told me about an elder she cared for. The woman's bedroom held a single folded futon and one window and nothing else. The nurse admitted that at first it looked almost empty to her, until she noticed how deeply and easily her patients slept, night after night. What she kept was the emptiness of that one room. What she refused was the habit of letting the bedroom become a storeroom. You might think this is only about not having enough space. It is something quieter. The Japanese word is seijaku, serene stillness, the tranquil emptiness prized in a place of true rest. And here, gently, the science follows. Researchers at St. Lawrence University found that people with more cluttered bedrooms tended to fall asleep more slowly and report more disturbed sleep. The room itself seemed to settle or unsettle the night. An empty sleeping room tells the body it is finally safe to fully let go. Let the room hold your rest and nothing else. The sixth thing they do not keep is the noise that never stops. No television left on for company. No radio droning through the day to fill the silence. In the homes of these elders, the loudest sound is often the kettle or the garden beyond the door. I have spent enough time in such homes to feel the contrast sharply against the houses I knew growing up, where something was always playing, always talking, always on. In the Okinawan home, when no one was speaking, there was simply quiet. And the quiet did not feel empty. It felt full. What they kept was the silence. What they refused was the urge to drown it. You might think this is only about preferring peace and quiet. It is something they treat as a real presence in the home. The Japanese call it shizukesa, chosen quietness. And the heart, it seems, is listening. A 2014 review in the European Heart Journal by Munzel and colleagues found that constant background noise keeps the body subtly on alert, keeping stress hormones higher, while quiet lets it settle. A home that hums with sound from morning to night keeps the body in a low, endless state of readiness. The elders kept silence lowers that hum, and a heart that isn't braced all day is a heart that lasts. Turn it off, now and then, and let the kettle have the room. And now, the seventh. I told you at the very beginning that the seventh was not a thing you remove with your hands, that it was one word, a way of seeing, and that once you held it, the other six would settle into place. Here it is. The seventh thing they do not keep is the just-in-case hoard. The things kept only out of guilt. The objects no longer used, no longer loved, held on to because duty says we should. The elders simply refuse to let the house fill with what obligation insists they keep. And the word, the one I have carried this whole way to give you, is danshari. Refuse, release, separate. To refuse what does not need to enter. To release what no longer serves. And to separate yourself, gently, from your attachment to things. It is the single quiet philosophy beneath all six absences you have just heard. Look back and you will see it everywhere. The cleared surface, that was Danshari. The bare wall, Danshari. The dim room that lets the day go, Danshari. The low floor that keeps the body free, Danshari. The empty bedroom, Danshari. The chosen silence, Danshari. Every absence was one small act of letting go. And here's what Danshari finally reveals. The real subject was never the house at all. It was the inner room. The empty shelf is only the outward shape of an unburdened life. These elders keep their homes light because it is how they keep the mind light, light enough to stay calm and kind and unhurried into very great old age. That is why they do not seem to rush at 90. They are not carrying what the rest of us carry. They set it down, a little at a time, year after year, with a smile rather than a struggle. So it comes to one sentence. In the end, we do not let go of things to have less. We let go of things to live more lightly, and to live, perhaps, a great deal longer in peace. So let us gather it in a single breath. The buried surface cleared, the shouting wall quieted, the light that burned too long lowered, the furniture that traps the body set aside for the honest floor, the bedroom that worked all night given back to rest, the noise that never stopped allowed at last to fall silent, and behind all six the one quiet word that names them, the refusing, the releasing, the gentle separating. Danshari, before you go, I would ask you one small thing. Of the 7, one will have landed more softly than the rest. One you felt in your chest as I spoke it. Leave me the number down below. Just the number, 1 through 7, nothing more, unless you wish to. I read them, every one. I ask for 2 reasons. The first, it helps me know which of these quiet truths to bring you more of. The second, the truer one, when you leave your number, someone scrolling tonight, tired and heavy and not quite sure why, will see they are not alone in it. Your one small number becomes company for a stranger. And if there is a woman in your life who has been carrying too much, in her home and in herself, send this to her gently, not as a fix, as a hand on the shoulder. Take only one of the 7 this week, only one. There is no rush here. There never was. Be gentle with yourself and with your home. I will be here when you return.